What if I told you that a woman was murdered, impaled through the chest by a spear, inside her own bedroom, and the man who did it looked police dead in the eye and said it was an accident? What if I told you that the only other witnesses in that apartment that night weren't human at all, they were smart speakers sitting on a shelf, quietly listening to everything? And what if I told you it took 6 years, 6 long, agonizing years, for Silvia Galva's family to finally hear the word guilty? This is not a story from a thriller novel. This is not a Hollywood movie. This happened in a luxury condo in Hallandale Beach, Florida, in the early hours of July 12, 2019. A 32-year-old woman lost her life. Her boyfriend walked free on bond for years. And the world almost never knew her name. My name is Guilty or Gone Crime, and today, we are diving deep into one of the most chilling, most bizarre, and most infuriating domestic violence cases in recent Florida history, the murder of Silvia Galva. Before we go any further, if this kind of content is what you're here for, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. I drop new true crime videos every week, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. Now, let's get into it. To understand what happened on that July night in 2019, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to understand who Silvia Galva was, and who Adam Richard Crespo was, and, most importantly, what their relationship looked like to the people who knew them best. Silvia Galva was 32 years old at the time of her death. By all accounts, she was a vibrant, creative woman. She had a passion for art, she had even painted pieces of her own, pieces that she wanted to hang in the home she shared with her boyfriend, Adam Crespo. But according to her family, Crespo would not even allow that small act of self-expression. He didn't want her paintings on the walls. He didn't want reminders that she existed as her own person, with her own voice, her own creativity, her own identity. Silvia's sister, Veronica, spoke out publicly and described a relationship built on control. She said Silvia had talked about leaving him, but she couldn't seem to do it. He always found a way to get back into her life, Veronica said. He was always dominant with her. He didn't let her have friends, go out, have a job, or even hang a painting she had made. I believe she was being manipulated by him and ended up being the victim in this scenario. Now, I want you to really sit with what Veronica just described, because what she is talking about has a name. It's called coercive control. And it is one of the most dangerous, and most misunderstood, forms of domestic abuse. It doesn't always start with a punch. It doesn't always start with a bruise you can see. It starts with isolation. Cutting the victim off from friends and family. Preventing them from working, so they become financially dependent. Controlling who they see, where they go, what they wear, what they can put on their own walls. Little by little, the victim's world shrinks until the abuser becomes the center of everything. And by the time it turns physically violent, the victim often has no one left to turn to. That was the world Silvia Galva was living in. Adam Richard Crespo was significantly older than Silvia. He was 43 at the time of the incident in 2019. He and Silvia lived together in a condo in Hallandale Beach, a coastal city in Broward County, South Florida. The kind of sun-drenched, upscale community where people go to enjoy life. Palm trees. Ocean breeze. Beautiful apartments. From the outside, their life probably looked like many others in that world. But behind closed doors, Veronica and the rest of the Galva family saw something deeply troubling. They saw a man who needed to control everything, and a woman who was slowly losing herself trying to survive within that control. Silvia had talked about leaving. But she was still there on the night of July 12, 2019. And that night would change everything. It was just after midnight when the evening began. Silvia had spent the day with one of her friends before meeting up with Crespo around midnight. The couple then spent some time at a popular bar in Hollywood, Florida, just a short drive from their condo. Before heading home around 1 a.m. Silvia's friend came back to the apartment with them that night. She was there. Inside the home. And she would become one of the most important witnesses in this entire case. It wasn't long after they arrived home that things began to unravel. Silvia's friend heard the couple arguing in their bedroom. She wasn't close enough to make out every word, but she could feel the tension radiating through the walls. She heard Crespo's voice, raised, insistent, telling Silvia to leave the room. And she heard Silvia refusing. Then, moments later, she heard Crespo calling out to her. He was yelling, telling her to call 911. She rushed to the bedroom. What she found inside would stay with her for the rest of her life. Silvia was on her back. The friend immediately began CPR and kept going until paramedics arrived. But what had actually happened in that bedroom? That is the question at the heart of this entire case. And the answer involves a weapon so unusual, so unexpected, that when you first hear about it, you might think someone made it up. The bed in Adam Crespo and Silvia Galva's bedroom was not an ordinary bed. The bed frame featured ornamental spears at its corners, decorative pieces, the kind of dramatic furniture you might find in a high-end home decor store. Except these weren't plastic replicas. They were real. And the spear that killed Silvia had a 5-foot shaft with a 12-inch double-sided metal blade. Let that sink in. A 12-inch double-sided metal blade. As a bedpost. Here is what Adam Crespo told police happened that night. He said that during the argument, when Silvia refused to leave the bedroom, he grabbed her by the ankles and began pulling her off the bed. He said that in an effort to resist being dragged, Silvia grabbed onto one of the ornamental spears at the foot of the bed. And then he told police he heard a snap and realized the spear had gone into her chest. And then, in what prosecutors and Silvia's family would later point to as one of the most damning details of the entire case, Crespo told officers that he pulled the blade out of Silvia's chest. He said he did it because he was hoping it was not too bad. It was bad. It was catastrophic. Silvia was rushed to Aventura Hospital, where she died from her injuries. A 32-year-old woman. Gone. In her own bedroom. On a summer night in South Florida. And in the hours that followed, a single question hung over everything: was this a horrific accident? Or was it murder? Hallandale Beach police did not take long to make their decision. Adam Richard Crespo was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, murder without premeditation, and booked into Broward County Jail. His attorney pushed back immediately. He called the charge an example of overzealous prosecution. He pointed out that Crespo had called 911 himself. He said Crespo had been cooperative with police from the very beginning. He maintained this was a tragic accident, a terrible chain of events that no one could have predicted or prevented. But investigators were not satisfied with Crespo's version of events. And as they dug deeper into the evidence, they discovered something that would make this case go national, something that raised questions nobody in law enforcement had ever really had to answer before. Adam Crespo had an Amazon Echo device, an Alexa smart speaker, in his home. And police believed it might have been listening when Silvia died. 1 month after Silvia's death, police successfully obtained a warrant for those recordings and received them from Amazon. The news spread everywhere. Could Alexa, a voice-activated smart speaker sitting on a shelf, solve a murder? The idea captured the public imagination and brought a massive spotlight to this case. People who had never heard of Hallandale Beach suddenly knew Silvia Galva's name. The police search warrant stated that investigators believed the evidence of the crime, audio recordings capturing the attack on Silvia, and any events that preceded or followed it, may be found on Amazon servers. Amazon confirmed they complied with the legally binding order. The world waited. But here is the twist. Despite all the attention, none of the recordings obtained from Amazon ultimately proved useful in the prosecution of the case. The smart speakers had not captured anything that could be used as evidence in court. The Alexa angle, as dramatic as it was, turned out to be a dead end. But there was something else. Something the prosecution would later call a chilling and devastating window into the final moments before Silvia died. Prosecutors obtained a cell phone video that had been recorded just before the stabbing, a video that contained audio of the couple's argument. And in that recording, the tension between Crespo and Silvia is unmistakable. You can hear him telling her to leave. You can hear her refusing. And then, in a moment that stopped the courtroom cold, you can hear Crespo say to her, "I can shoot you." And Silvia, pushed to her absolute limit, daring her abuser to follow through, responds, "So shoot me. So shoot me." Those 3 words. The last recorded defiance of a woman who was about to be killed. I want you to think about who Silvia Galva was in that moment. Not a victim. A fighter. A woman who refused to be intimidated even in her final minutes. And then she was gone. What followed the arrest of Adam Crespo was something all too familiar to families of domestic violence victims: a long, grinding, exhausting wait for justice. Crespo was eventually released on bond. That means that while Silvia's family grieved, while they visited her grave, while they celebrated birthdays without her, while they sat through holidays with an empty chair at the table, the man they believed had killed her was out in the world, walking free. 6 years. 6 years passed between the night Silvia died and the moment a jury finally delivered a verdict. By the time the trial of Adam Richard Crespo finally got underway in the summer of 2025, he was 49 years old. And the trial that followed was one of the most remarkable in recent Broward County history, not just because of the evidence presented, but because of the lengths prosecutors went to in order to show the jury exactly what had happened in that bedroom. In one of the most dramatic moments of the entire trial, prosecutors actually built a full reconstruction of the couple's bed, ornamental spears and all, right there inside the courtroom. They brought in the actual spear, all 5 feet of it, with its 12-inch double-sided blade, and displayed it before the jury. If there had been any abstract sense of the weapon up until that point, seeing it in person removed every last bit of it. This was not a decorative trinket. This was a killing instrument. Prosecutors also played a cell phone video of the couple's argument. They played Crespo's police interrogation footage. They walked the jury methodically through every piece of physical evidence, every timeline inconsistency, every reason why the story Crespo had told police simply could not be true. The defense called their own expert, a forensic pathologist and former medical examiner named Dr. John Maracchini, who testified that he did not consider Galva's death a homicide, and that an accident was a genuine possibility. He said the manner of death was, in his professional opinion, undetermined. The prosecution was ready for that. The battle over cause of death became the beating heart of this trial. And the prosecution's medical expert delivered what many courtroom observers called the decisive blow to the entire defense case. Dr. Benjamin Mathis used autopsy photos to tell the jury plainly, this was a definite homicide. Because the spear had not merely punctured Silvia's chest. It had gone completely through her breastplate and out through her back. And that, he said, required significant, deliberate force. This was not a spear that snapped accidentally. This was a spear that was driven. Another expert, a reconstruction specialist named Tom Hill, told the jury he had physically tried to recreate every single version of events that Crespo had described to police. Every scenario. Every possible angle. Accident. Self-infliction. Unintended consequence. None of them matched. Not one. The evidence simply did not support any version of events other than an intentional act. And the expert also noted something chilling about the way the wooden shaft of the spear had snapped. The break pattern indicated the spear had been bent in the direction of the bed, which directly contradicted Crespo's claim that Silvia had pulled the spear toward herself. Assistant State Attorney Jacqueline Brody stood before the jury in closing arguments and did not mince words. There is no scenario, she said. No speculative, possible, imaginary scenario that exists where this was an accident. This was an intentional act by that man. The defense urged the jury to consider reasonable doubt. They argued there was no direct physical evidence proving murder. They pointed to the 911 call. They said Crespo was distraught. They asked the jury to consider that accidents do happen, even terrible, fatal ones. The jury was not persuaded. Jurors deliberated for just over 90 minutes before returning their verdict. 90 minutes. After 6 years of waiting, after weeks of testimony, after all the scientific evidence and all the grief, it took the jury less than 2 hours to decide. Guilty. Second-degree murder. The courtroom was full when the verdict came down. Crespo did not flinch as he heard his fate. Silvia's sister and mother held each other in the gallery. 6 years of pain, 6 years of showing up, 6 years of fighting for a woman they loved, and finally, those 2 words. And then on October 31, 2025, Adam Richard Crespo was brought back to court for sentencing. Crespo's parents appeared and asked for mercy, saying their son had loved Silvia and would never have intentionally hurt her. Crespo himself spoke. He said he still loved her. He said he regretted what happened. But Judge Andrew Siegel had heard everything. He had watched a family be destroyed. He had read every piece of evidence. And he rejected the defense's request for a reduced sentence of just 20 years. Instead, he sentenced Adam Richard Crespo to life in prison. No parole. Life. The family said Crespo had never shown genuine remorse. And the judge agreed. Veronica Galva, Silvia's sister, the same woman who had stood up at that very first court appearance 6 years earlier and told the world her sister was being controlled and manipulated, was asked by reporters whether justice had been done. Definitely, she said. It's been 6 years and he got life, so that, it's only not equal because we lost my sister. We lost a life. We love her, and we miss her a lot. Justice? But not equal. Because no sentence, no verdict, no number of years behind bars gives a family back what was taken from them. Silvia Galva was 32 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She had art she wanted to make, paintings she wanted to hang on her own walls, a life she was trying to find the courage to reclaim. She had people who loved her deeply. And she was robbed of all of it. I want to take a moment here, because I think it is important that we do not just consume this story as entertainment and move on. The murder of Silvia Galva is a window into something much bigger, something that is happening to women every single day, in every country, in homes that look perfectly normal from the outside. Coercive control, the kind that Veronica described, the isolation, the financial dependency, the control over something as small as which paintings go on the wall, is one of the most dangerous forms of domestic abuse. And it is often invisible until it is too late. If you are watching this and something in this story feels familiar, if you are in a relationship where you feel controlled, isolated, or afraid, please reach out to someone you trust. You can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You deserve safety. You deserve freedom. You deserve to hang your paintings on your own walls. Silvia Galva waited 6 years for justice. Her family waited 6 years. And in the end, the man who took her life will spend the rest of his own behind bars. This case also made history for another reason. It was one of the first major murder investigations where law enforcement sought evidence from Amazon smart speaker recordings. It sparked a national conversation about privacy, surveillance, and what it means to have always listening devices inside our most intimate spaces. Those questions are still with us today. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. Truly. It means you care about these stories. It means you care about the people behind them. People like Silvia Galva, who deserve so much more than what she got. If this video moved you, please like it. It helps more people find this channel and learn about cases that deserve to be heard. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with someone who needs to hear Silvia's name. Rest in peace, Silvia Galva. You are not forgotten.